little while ago, when discussing the measure before us, Representative Lawler talked about how the people in our state fell into roughly three groups when it comes to the issue that's now before us. A third who clearly support the death penalty, a third who are clearly opposed, and a third who are ambivalent. I am someone who had always fallen into that last category. On the one hand, it was evident that the death penalty was not an effective deterrent. On the other hand, it seemed that in certain horrible cases, it might be the most appropriate penalty. When I first came to this chamber in 1995, Timothy McVeigh had just blown up the federal building, the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, killing 165 innocent men, women, and children. And it seemed somehow just that he should be sentenced to death for such a horrible crime. So, up until today, I have always voted no on the abolition of the death penalty. During previous debates, many points were raised that, for me, raised more doubts. It seems strange to me that we had on the books a law that rarely worked, that there were people who had been ostensibly sentenced to death who languished on death row for 10, 20, 30 plus years without the penalty ever being imposed. I also wondered about basic questions of fairness. It seemed to me strange that your life or death could be affected by which jurisdiction you were tried in, which prosecutor handled your case, who your defense attorney turned out to be. And though my good friend Representative Mike Attell made it sound like it's black or white, whether you are dealing with a capital felony case, in fact, the prosecutor has discretion in determining whether or not to pursue the death penalty. And different prosecutors make different decisions, so that for any given individual, the question of whether or not they were facing capital punishment was, in some sense of the word, random. In 2005, the last time this body debated this issue, we were faced with a specific extreme situation. A serial killer, Michael Ross, a man who was guilty beyond doubt, had been convicted of capital crimes. The prosecutor wanted him put to death, and he himself wanted the death penalty. Many victims' families were quoted in the media saying that they had had enough and that they wanted this execution carried out. Those voices carried tremendous weight with me personally. I understood, to some extent, I don't think any of us can say we fully understand, but I had some sense of the horrible pain and suffering that this monstrous individual had caused across eastern Connecticut. And it didn't seem to me right that we could consider striking the death penalty from the books on the eve of his execution. I opposed on that day abolition of the death penalty, instead supporting a moratorium and study after his execution so that we could see how fairly the law was being carried out. Michael Ross was executed. I was struck after the execution by the statements given by a number of folks who were in the victims' families, saying that the execution was not what they expected, that it didn't give them the sense of closure that they had expected, that they felt he had died too easily, that he should have had to suffer more. In short, that it didn't match up with what they had expected and didn't give them anything in particular. I was personally approached by a member of a murder victim's family around the time of that 2000 debate. And she said something very simple to me. She said, please do not support the death penalty. Please do not kill in my name. The death penalty does nothing to help me, and it hurts our society. Please end it.